Welcome to Steph's podcast. Thank you so much for listening in every single week. As you guys know, I have a different guest who will come on the show and talk about all things ADU, all things multifamily, all things real estate investment strategies. And I'm very selective of who I have on. These are very highly vetted individuals, highly experienced people who have a lot of knowledge and a lot of value to bring to you guys every single week. If you have someone who you think might be a good fit for the show, make sure you guys reach out to me. And another way to stay connected, I know that some of you guys are listening in every single week on the podcast, and you may not know that I do have my active YouTube channel where I'm always sharing other sorts of tips and tricks on what I'm actively doing on myself as an ADU strategist and consultant and investor. And then also, make sure you guys reach out and follow me on Instagram, Steph Sells ADU. I constantly have different content on there showcasing a lot of what the strategies that we're talking about on this podcast, whether it's midterm, ADUs, multifamily, acquisitions, you name it, just property management, mom life, all the things. Make sure you guys follow me on there so we can continue to cultivate this relationship. Now enjoy this episode, and I'll see you on the next one. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to my podcast, Steph's podcast on all things ADU. As you guys know, each week we have a special guest who comes to us and talks to us about all things ADUs or something along those lines, right? Related to that topic, so that I can keep you guys up to date with a lot of the trends, a lot of the hacks, tips and tricks that we should be looking into in today's market. And today it's no different. We have a very special guest who is very knowledgeable in ADUs, but then also very knowledgeable in a couple other things. So I'm going to go ahead and read off her bio to you guys so you guys can get to know her a little bit, and then we'll dive deep into our conversation today. So her name is Maria Rogers. She's an entrepreneur. She's a franchise expert, a funding broker, and as I mentioned, she's an ADU specialist. So that's a passion that we share in common. She's a lifelong entrepreneur and a proud Charlotte native. Maria has built a career around helping others achieve their businesses and investment dreams. With over 20 plus years of experience in business ownership, she has successfully launched, scaled, and sold multiple ventures, making her a trusted guide for aspiring entrepreneurs. And funding is a huge topic in our industry, just real estate as a whole. So I'm very excited to learn a lot from her today. I'll kind of cut it off there because I don't want to give them a lot of what you've been able to accomplish. I'll hand it off to you so you can tell them a little bit more about what you've been able to accomplish, how it all got started, a little bit about your background might be a good place to begin, right? I always like to know, how did you end up in this space? What led you to it? And then we'll kind of go from there. Thank you for being here.
Well, thanks for having me. Yeah, it's a long list with 20 plus years of.
It's a long, yeah. I usually condense it because, I can give the digestible version, but I really like to hear it from the guest itself,
Yeah.
It's better than that.
Yeah, well, so obviously to unpack that, I mean, we only have a 30 minutes here, so we'll try to do the very condensed.
We go over, no worries. We have time. Hopefully you have time, but if you have other things to do, don't even worry about it. We can have a part 2 episode.
It might be part 2, part 3. Well, I mean, obviously being an entrepreneur just kind of came natural to me because my mother was also an entrepreneur. So it just, it's new. And then owning businesses and mentoring people. And, I'm just a coach and kind of a mentor by nature. And I love to give what I've learned in my life. And, as far as like ADUs, this is kind of a fairly new venture. A couple of years ago, I guess, started to learn about ADUs because a lot of people in the Charlotte, I'm from Charlotte, North Carolina. It's not as common here as, or at least I didn't think it was, like it is in California, right? So
Right.
I started to learn more about it. My husband's been in the construction industry for many years. And so, as a family, this really started to, kind of just continue to come up, and then had an opportunity to really move forward in this, and we started a business, Stillwater's Tiny Homes, in Charlotte, North Carolina. And it's a family business. It's me, myself, my husband, Brian Rogers, who is the general contractor, and my son-in-law, John Connor, and he was a former Marine, although I don't think you're ever not a Marine, but I don't know how to say that.
Right.
And so he works pretty heavy in the business, and my daughter as well. She does the marketing, and so it's really turned into a family venture. None of my family has ever been part of any of the businesses before, so this is definitely a new dynamic. But yeah, we're really enjoying it, and just one thing kind of leads to another. And I have a funding company, as you mentioned, because I work with lots of people who start businesses. And it's interesting because as I started to get into that business, I started to see more opportunities for the funding side for ADUs and investors. So, it's just like one thing, how it is when you wear a lot of hats, as you and I talked about before we started. One thing always leads to another and opens up another door. And so, yeah, that's kind of what has led me to this point of, having Stone Funding Solutions, as well as Stillwater's Tiny Homes. And then my business, franchise business, is FranMet. And it stands for Franchise Mentor. So.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it seems like you've kind of figured out something that works for you and your team, which so happens to be your family, which I think is amazing. And with your husband's experience, in construction and yours in financing, it's like the best combo, right? That anybody can ask for. I think it's cool the way that you reached out to me too, because one of my goals this year is to connect with other hyperlocal contractors or design and build firms in different states, right? Because as you mentioned, it's not as popular in other states like it is in California or Oregon or Washington. But my theory is that at some point it's going to get to that point. So it's great to know that now I have somebody, in your market who I can refer business to. We can collaborate like we are right now. We can talk about what's working in our market, what's not working, and then advocate more for ADUs, because it's really, I think, the strategy that's going to help everyone, no matter where they're at in their path in life, whether they're their first time investor, whether they're a seasoned investor, whether they're a developer. You kind of see all different walks of life and motivations as to why they want to build, which is why I'm all about the ADU advocacy, right, of things.
For
And
sure.
one of the things I was going to ask you with financing is, what the main way that I see my clients financing is, if it's a primary, they're using a HELOC loan, right? But if it's not, because I work with a lot of investors, it's very difficult for them to get financing with the HELOC loan if it's not a primary residence. And this goes for residential, right? With multifamily, it seems like there's a lot more financing ways to structure it, the deal, where it helps. But what are you seeing, and how are you helping clients when it comes to funding ADUs, whether they bought the house and are ready to build and have equity, or they don't have any equity and they haven't even bought the house, they're looking to buy in order to build, type of thing?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I mean, there's so many different reasons that somebody would be looking at putting an ADU on their property. If it's for mom, or dad, or, child, failure to launch, whatever it may be. So that is very different, right? Because it's not for, a business, and it's not a rental. When you're looking at funding for a rental, I'm sure it's the same for you. You actually cannot be a primary resident of
Right.
that home and then put, a rental or use more of a commercial loan for an ADU. So you have to not live on that in that property, right? It cannot be your primary dwelling. And so HELOCs are very common, but there's also some other ways that you can fund, like securities lending. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's where, if you have a portfolio of, let's just say, IRA, 401k, that type of thing, you can borrow, get a line of credit, basically using that as collateral. And so I do work with companies that do that, and you can use that money for whatever you want. So there's no.
That's a really good point. I did have someone, my friend Karen Hall, she owns a self-directed IRA company. And I had her on the podcast, and she talked about how you could leverage your 401k or, self-directed IRA. But walk me through that process, like time frame wise, how much do they lend towards the project? And then like what are the requirements with that? Just a brief overview. You don't have to go into detail, but I
Yeah.
talked about it on the podcast. So it'd be good for people to know, like, oh, okay, well, if I have, this option, what does that process look like?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm going to set you up with the company to really go through, is this viable? Would we have to move some of the money into another account? Because there's some variables there. Keep in mind, I am the broker doing this, making these connections. I am not the person doing this. Okay. So when I say that to say, they certainly would get more involved with the client on what's possible. But the what would start with me is a conversation. How much do you have in, these different accounts? As far as how much you could borrow against that would really that's going to be a person to person, it's
Credit,
not,
income.
it's not so cut and dry. So that's something that, we could discuss, but no, it's an option. I mean, a lot of people don't even know it's an option. So if you have, $300,000 in a 401k, then let's talk. Let's see if this actually could be an option. And the interest rates on that recently were about 5%. And
Oh, wow.
yeah. And it's a line of credit too. So if you're not using all that, let's just say 300,000, let's just say you used 150 of that. Well, it's a line of credit. So you're not paying interest on 300,000. You're paying interest on 150. Okay. You're paying interest on what you used.
What
Just,
you use, right?
just a HELOC, that type of thing. Yeah. And so some of the nuances, obviously would just depend on, the client, the investments, that type of thing. But it's a good option, right? And when it comes to investors, there's obviously lots of options out there, for investors. They could use, their existing property, do a DSCR loan, which you're probably familiar with. There are, some different lending options for investors that are out there that they may not be aware of either. I heard this said, and I love it. Make your soldiers work for you, meaning your equity in your home. They're not doing any, that equity in that home is not making you more money.
Right.
So if you have $200,000 in an existing property, then roll that into building an ADU. Now you've got two rentals on one property.
Mm-hmm.
and you're making the, the house that, you already have equity in, but make you more money.
Yeah, you're creating what they call forced appreciation
Yep.
while at the same time you're collecting that cash flow. And sometimes you can pay off that loan a lot quicker, right? Typically with a HELOC, it's like a 10-year, 15-year term. But if
Mhm.
you're renting it out for, let's say your HELOC payment is $1,000 a month and you're renting out your ADU, which here in California, it's crazy, but these small
Yeah.
units are renting out for 2,500.
Right.
So take those additional 1,500 that you're cash flowing, and you can continue to pay off that loan,
Right.
and cut it down from 10 years to 5 years to maybe sooner. But ultimately, it's just a great way to leverage your equity because, as you said, I'm actually having conversations with people right now. I'm offering a free equity review. And a lot of our landlords for some of the properties that we manage always ask me, like, well, what does that mean? And I'm like, well, we literally sit down, we have a consultation, we talk about how much equity you have, and we talk about what you would like to do with that equity based on your goals, whether
Mhm.
it's growing the portfolio, doing a 1031 exchange. Maybe you're fine where you're at right now, but you want more cash flow. We can look at a feasibility inspection and see how many ADUs we can build if
Mhm.
it's residential or multifamily. Because one of the cool things about California is, and one thing I wanted to talk to you about too was in California, we have very ADU pro housing laws in
Mhm.
residential and in multifamily. There
Mhm.
was one that was just passed this year, SB 1211, which now allows us to build up to 8 ADUs if there's an 8 unit existing building, eight
That's crazy.
detached.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. So
Not
I wanted
too
to
much
learn.
in North Carolina yet.
I know. And I'm sure that's the case in other states, right? I've had people, I had my friend David talk about ADUs in Massachusetts because that was recently passed.
Mhm.
And I've talked to a couple people here and there in different states, but I don't know enough about your market and what the rules are around
Mhm.
ADUs. If you
Mhm.
want to give us a brief overview of what's allowed, right? Is there like a state ADU ordinance and then every local municipality has their own added rules on top of that, or like
Yeah.
what does that look like? Mhm.
Yeah, it's the different municipalities. You could be in, one county, and then, they allow up to 1,000 square feet,
Mm,
percent of your existing dwelling, but only one unit. I have not seen any other municipality allow more than one unit. And there are some counties that are even strict about, even if you have a shed, it's considered a structure. So
mm,
couldn't put an ADU on that, right? But I would say for the most part in the area, and I don't work all of North Carolina, so I don't know every area of North Carolina. We're in Charlotte, Union County, very, large areas, but we don't really go outside of that right now because of the construction aspect, right? Having the relationships with contractors. You and I had that conversation on the phone, and
right,
that's what I was
right.
reaching out to, is like, how can we, help these people? But in the areas that we're in, I mean, yeah, it's 50% of your existing dwelling,
Okay.
and not to exceed, I've seen, again, 1,000, some places 900, some places 800, but I'm
Mm,
also seeing that like change I mean, like within, the last couple of years, I've seen increases in the size. Um,
yeah.
I, I don't know if we'll ever see, the ability to have two ADUs on a property. I don't know. I don't know.
I'm hopeful that you guys will at some point because I know in California now we're able to do two. We could do a junior ADU and an ADU, and in some cases you can do three or four if we
Mhm.
subdivide lots.
Right.
But one thing you did mention that I would want people to really register is that it's very hard to scale a company that really has construction in-house because you need to find quality people, right? That's one of the main reasons why I also haven't scaled outside of LA County and Orange County, I'll maybe go to San Diego, not too far out,
Yeah.
but further than that or more inland, it's very difficult for us to oversee projects.
Yeah.
And also having to deal with local municipalities. Although in California, it's a statewide ordinance, so
Mhm.
no local municipality can prohibit you from building, but
Mhm.
they can still impose their own restrictions on the building size, setbacks, a couple of things, not even height requirements.
Right.
But yeah, I definitely like to stay in a market where I'm familiar with the process. I understand, how they work. And so that's very important. I think that will alone will help you guys. And I'm sure it sounds like you guys have already established a network, a community, clientele that you guys are working with. And what does those projects typically look like? Like here in California, even though we can build up to 1,200 square feet, you'd be surprised. There aren't a lot of 1,200 detached square, new construction builds because not all of our properties are big lots.
Right.
If we have a 5,000 square foot lot, that's like a good deal. That's a good size lot. So what I'm seeing is a lot of garage conversions in Southern California, but Oregon has a lot of um, attic conversions, basement conversions. What are you seeing in your market? Like what does a typical build out look like?
Yeah, same. I mean, ADUs, and just back to your point, if you have a large enough lot, you can subdivide. So yeah, so just but you have to subdivide. You
In
couldn't.
order to, yeah. Mhm.
But garage conversions, yeah, and we're seeing definitely like people who want to even convert their garage for their man cave, just playtime, whatever it may be.
Mhm.
We have a couple that we're working on right now. They're converting their garage to put their a brand new truck in there that's like an electric vehicle, and it's a
Nice.
pretty large vehicle, and so they want to convert it and put solar in and things like that. So there's so many different reasons, and but yeah, we're seeing definitely garage conversions. We have not had any attic conversions.
Okay.
I do have a client who reached out, who's actually a neighbor, and they asked about us coming out to take a look at theirs. That would be the first attic conversion, but I haven't seen a whole lot of that. Mostly ADUs, and of course, you are gonna resonate with us. You've got people who I want to build a tiny home community,
Oh, yes, yes.
and
I'm
it's
dealing with one of those clients right now as we speak.
yeah,
I actually have a property up north, and I was talking to the city. You can't do that. It's a whole process.
it's
It's
a
a whole
process.
niche on
Yeah.
its own, right? Not
Mhm.
to mention that. So yeah, that'll be a different episode that we
Yeah,
can
right.
talk
Exactly.
about. But I
Yeah.
do see why people would want to, right? They see this vision,
Yeah.
but one thing they don't take into consideration is the time frame, the cost, which was going to be some of my other questions. Is typically here in California, for a typical 500 square foot garage conversion, typically garages are 500 square feet,
Mhm.
400 square feet. You're looking at about 150,000 to, I quoted one yesterday,
Mhm.
196,000.
Mhm.
So definitely a lot higher than last year. Last year it was 120,000 to 150,000. And my take is with AB 1033, this is a new legislation that's now allowing cities to opt in so that they can sell off their ADU. Once
Yeah. Yeah.
once your city adopts that, then the cost of everything will go up. So
Mhm.
what does cost and time frame look like for you guys on a typical, let's say, garage conversion?
If it's a garage conversion, it's going to be in that 100 to could be 150. It just depends,
Mhm.
because the concrete, what is the condition of the existing garage,
Right.
and if there's some work to be done there. So there's some factors, and also what the customer wants, but just on, I would say on
Yeah.
average, yeah, about one we just quoted one recently. It was pretty basic, and I think it was like 110.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah.
That
So
sounds about right. And I think honestly, under 100,000 in any state, it's kind of hard to find. I tell clients, like, if somebody's quoting you 60 or 80,000 for your ADU, I would run or
you're
make
gonna
sure
get what you pay for.
right. You definitely get what you pay for.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, people, we're, when we give that price, we're considering the, the architect, the design, right? Or the permitting, running water, electric, all of these, the utilities. So we're giving a turnkey price where,
Right.
some, Chuck in a truck might come up and say, oh, I could do that for $60,000. But okay, well, what about the design, the architect, the permit? Where's all that going to come in? And the danger of that is, you and I both know, here's, customer thinking, oh yeah, we can do this for 60,000. They sign with this guy and he starts to get to work. And now it's going to cost them 110, 120,000, maybe more, maybe
Yeah.
more. I mean, so they're going to end up,
Because
yeah,
maybe more than that. I've had clients who chose to go with somebody else who was charging less, and then they call me back saying, hey, this contractor left my job halfway done. It's in the framing phase. No other contractor is going to want to take on that project
right.
because of liability reasons. So
Mhm.
now you have, a framed up ADU that's probably you're going to have to tear down and start it over with somebody else who is going to do that. Another reason why I like to also give the proposal for the full build out is we actually also hedge against like inflation and make sure that we take that into consideration, because a lot of these contractors, you and I were talking offline, right, with some of these companies who uh, just didn't really budget correctly. They were
Right.
wanting to scale, took on design, then thought they can take on construction, started bidding, but not bidding properly, right? You have to make sure that you take into consideration any sort of increase in anything. I mean, even right now with tariffs, right? Like you got to make sure that you budget that into your proposal, and we give the proposal out. I think it's for like 2 or 3 weeks. It's in
Mhm.
good standing for that amount of time. But yeah, that's one of the benefits of working with somebody who knows what they're doing is they're going to quote you what it should cost right now until the next year. How long does it take to build a typical ADU out there? Because
Um,
our city here still need to get it together, but
yeah. I mean, I would say, we tell people not, it could be 9 to 12 months.
perfect. Yeah,
Uh,
same here.
But I mean, we just signed, had a contract signed not long ago. We've already been through the design call, and we had the architect out there, and he already has our plans. We have plans already. So they just wanted like one modification, and he's already got our plans back to us that are blue, permit ready, stamped, and so we're going to permitting. So I mean, this project actually could go pretty quick.
Right.
So
Yeah,
yeah.
that's one of the benefits of working with an architect, working with a team that really knows what they're doing. You can get through the permitting process a lot quicker.
Yeah.
Same thing here. There's OTC, over the counter approval, that we can get for some of the junior ADUs and
Mm,
even some ADUs in certain cities if
okay.
you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I always tell my clients, 9 to 12 months for a garage conversion, 12 to 15 months for ground up.
Do you really? Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
we
And
say just about
day to day, maybe 8 months, but with LA being such a big city,
right.
what holds us back a lot sometimes is these utility companies. Those
Yeah.
can hold you back a month to 3 months,
Yeah.
sometimes more or less, which really affects the time frame. But
Hmm.
other than that, I mean, I think we're getting a lot better with streamlining the process with these
Hmm.
cities, but
Hmm.
it's an ever evolving thing, right? I've been doing this for 4 or 5 years now with the ADUs, and back in 2017 to where we are now, I mean, legislation just keeps updating every single year almost, and so cities have to adapt quickly, and it's very difficult to have the people from the planning department understand everything and be updated. So yeah, it
Hmm.
takes a lot of effort and choosing the right team. I'm big on making sure you vet the people that you work with.
Hmm.
And yeah, it sounds like, I mean, you have a great setup with your husband's experience, and turning it into a family business that hopefully, you guys can all just kind of grow together and make it better and at some point, scale to the entire state, at
Yeah.
least on the design phase and consulting phase.
Yeah, and that's what, I reached out to you. That was why,
Mhm.
we had our initial conversation
Yeah,
because, I feel like you can find a contractor but
right.
a lot of times that contractor, they don't have plans. Maybe they've never built an ADU.
Right.
Maybe they've done some, other work, right? Like renovations and things like that. But so for us to be able to work with a client and get to the point where you have those permit ready, plans, and here's what it looks like. Here's the um, here's your setbacks here, give them basically a 3D rendering of their build on their property, which we do. We use programs, and I won't give any plugs here for that, but
Yeah.
so we use programs, that we will put the ADU on their property that will show the setbacks and shows the utilities and shows all of that. So
Awesome.
yeah, so that we can actually get to that point, but now they need the contractor, and with that being said, that contractor needs to pull the permit with their license, because they're the ones who are going to be doing the work. So that's the challenge, like you were saying. I mean, you don't want to put your name on it and then hand it over to contractors. It's a little nerve wracking to do that. So
Right.
finding that how to do that without putting yourself on the line, is definitely a big question of mine. I haven't done anything with it yet, but I know you and I had discussed that. So,
Yeah, and I'm sure at some point you and I will work together because that's the goal. My goal is to connect with people like you in every hyperlocal market and
mhm,
every state and build a business through relationships and vetted networks. Because while there's good, people like you and I who have good intentions, we want to build a business while helping others. There's also this ADU wave of architects and contractors that are not doing that.
right.
They don't have the best interest of the client. They don't care about, being vetted and with the contractor world, it's such a sticky area because they aren't really held accountable to
Mhm,
any
mhm,
standard. They could literally just walk away
yeah.
and, you lose thousands of dollars. So yeah, I really always emphasize that. And I know
Mhm,
that at some point you and I will end up working
yeah.
together because now you're my go-to in your
Perfect.
market. So yeah, I love that. And if you ever have people out in SoCal, let me know. I'm also expanding to Florida, South Florida,
Mhm.
and a couple other states.
Okay. Yeah, we'll talk offline about that because
We will.
I've got
Yeah.
connections in Florida. So
Amazing.
yeah,
Yeah. What part of Florida?
all of Florida.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll definitely set up a call with you after this
Yeah, for
podcast.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, as you guys can tell, guys, it's a very casual conversation, but I'm very grateful to be able to have somebody talk about ADUs in different states. So you guys get to see what people are doing in other markets. And it seems like you guys aren't really doing anything different than we are.
Not really. No. I would
Yeah,
say the biggest difference would be, the laws and, like here, the HOA is definitely an issue, right? I mean, for you guys, it's not
right.
because,
But it was at the beginning. That's why I think it'll get better for you
yeah,
guys with time. I
yeah,
would hope that at some point there's like an ADU ordinance statewide
right.
that all counties have to abide by, but
Mhm.
they can implement their own, rules and regulations, but they have to allow for anyone, and that includes HOAs. Right now, one of the biggest hurdles is dealing with coastal commission.
Oh, really?
Um, and hopefully we're able to, do something about that too. Because yeah, if you have a property near the coastal area, forget it. Like your ADU is not going to get approved, or it's
Mm,
going to take forever to get approved. And right now we're kind of working to not
mhm.
have to go through that hurdle, which I remember was the same situation with HOAs about 3-4 years
Right.
ago. Yeah.
Mhm.
So I think as one state starts adopting more
Yeah.
ADU friendly laws, every other state's going to follow. So
Yeah. So maybe in
yeah,
a
and
few
then
years.
hopefully we can even do a meetup, right? I do
Yeah.
meetups in SoCal. I'm gonna do one in North California, and thinking of doing one in Massachusetts with my friend David. And so, yeah, part of the advocacy goal is to also like just collaborate, with ADU open houses, ADU meetups.
Yeah, that'd be
We'll talk offline. I got a lot of ideas, but how can people connect with you if they wanted to talk about exploring the option of building, funding? We didn't really even get to touch on business funding or the
yeah.
franchise, but any of those services that you offer, how do people connect with you? What's the best way?
Well, I have 3 different websites and but
I
I
don't know
would
how you do it. I only have one.
I know, 3 different, CRMs and yeah. Um,
Wow.
I would say the best way to contact me is, Maria at Stillwater's Tiny Homes, and, .com, obviously, Maria at Stillwater's Tiny Homes.com. And, my phone number and email address, are on there as well. But that's my personal email. But you can go to Stillwater's tinyhomes.com as well and take a look at our website and look at our plans. We have existing plans that people can choose from. We allow up to 2 modifications that are non-structural. And so there's no additional cost to do that. But yeah, they can contact us. We do free consultations. We'll come out, do a site visit if it makes sense. And see if it's a viable build on a property, and just for them to meet us. And yeah, it's pretty simple. But and if you're interested in funding, just email the same email.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll make sure that your website and your phone number is in the YouTube and Spotify and LinkedIn applications. So we'll make sure to put all that information out.
Yeah.
Yeah, anything else you want to share before we wrap up?
I feel like there's so much more that we could share. You're right. It could
Yeah,
be
this was just a short intro on, the whole ADU movement in your market, but
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I would just share, with anybody who is interested, just reach out to me or Steph, and just to learn. We're happy to share. This is such a great option for people who have aging parents.
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah, better than putting them in the nursing home. I just did a video on our Facebook and Instagram recently about that, and rental, income. A lot of people are always wanting to flip homes and want that rental income. Well, you've got a ton of backyard. You could actually just put a rental right there,
Right.
So it's closer than you may think, right? I mean, so just reach out to us, and let's see what's possible. So that's it. But
I love
thank you
that.
so much. Thanks so much, Stephanie. I appreciate it.
No, thank you. I really hope people reach out to you, and I'll make sure we share all of this content with you. I'll tag you on Instagram, and we're going to definitely have a part 2 or a part
Yeah,
3 for this,
I
because we
know.
have 2 other businesses, and I have a lot of ideas on how we can collaborate. So I'm excited for that. And yeah, thank you again for your time.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
All right. You have a good one. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening. I hope you found this episode informative and helpful. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to reach out to me on Instagram or LinkedIn. I'm always happy to chat about ADUs and help you with your journey, whether it's consulting, acquisitions, management, you name it. Just reach out to me and let's schedule a quick call. And lastly, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any future episodes. I'll be back next week with another great guest and more insights on all things ADU. Thanks again for listening. I'll see you next time.